Wow. Wow. You have to take a sharp intake of breath, not because the guest that I have with me now is intimidating, but the storyline that he is a part of in Coronation Street is one that you watch with increasing horror. A 16-year-old Bethany Platts being groomed into a sex ring by someone she thinks loves her. Nathan Curtis is the name of the character. He is more than twice her age in Coronation Street. It is played brilliantly, chillingly, manipulatively by Chris Harper, who is sitting before me. Chris, good afternoon.
Hiya, good afternoon.
I mean, it has to be quite an intro.
Yeah, wow, thank you.
Well,
I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there you go. When you first received these scripts, what went through your mind?
I really wanted to do this. I really wanted to play the part. It was so brilliantly written. The writers had clearly done their research. They knew they were in it for the long haul. They were warning me well ahead of where the story was going, although it wasn't decided. But they really cared about Bethany, about the character of Bethany and where she was going and what was going to happen to her. And immediately it rang all the bells.
Because, of course, with plot lines in soaps, because of the speed at which it has to be written and then it has to be filmed and then it has to go out, of course, you can draw on many plot lines from your own experiences of life. Here, you really had to go and do a lot of research, didn't you? You had to make sure you understood.
Yeah, the writers have done that right from word go.
But you needed to, didn't you?
I did too. I was very lucky. I was approached by a wonderful charity called voicingcsa.uk. And they've asked me, first of all, to be an ambassador, and now I'm really privileged. I'm a patron, and that's a survivor-led charity helping victims or survivors, however it is they wish to term themselves, find their voice and bring people from around the country to be able to realise that what happened to them wasn't their fault. It was wrong, and most importantly, I think that they're not alone. There's a lot of support and a lot of love out there where a lot of these guys help each other out.
For those people who haven't seen Coronation Street in a little while, give us a sense of Nathan Curtis. Who is this man? He's
incredibly self-serving and duplicitous. He, without batting an eyelid, really, he's taken on this charismatic, sparky, bright 16-year-old girl, and he's what's rather strangely called love-bombed her. He's just showered her with affection and attention. He's told her how clever and bright and beautiful and wonderful and creative she is, and he's found out more about her, and he's shown all the interest of someone who would be falling in love. And they've fallen in love with each other, and he's moved her in, and he's now proposed to her. And
Just to be clear, they haven't fallen in love with each other.
No, but that's where I'm going. That's Bethany's viewpoint.
Exactly.
She thinks she's got this sort of bright, smart guy with a car and a business and his own flat, and she's been living at home with her very supportive family, but, you know, at home, cooped up with loads of relatives around her, and suddenly she has all this independence. But actually, she's being duped into sort of sexual acts with his friends, and they're not really friends, they're paying for the privilege. It's really, really dark and very brave of Corrie to be doing this. But it's happening out there, and it's becoming clearer and clearer that it's a bigger and bigger issue in the country.
We're going to play a scene now from a recent episode after one of Nathan's friends rapes Bethany. Here Nathan speaks to her about ending their relationship, but Bethany says she wants to stay together.
You get yourself to bed. You've had a tiring couple of days, and I'll sleep on the sofa tonight. It'll give us a chance to think things through.
I don't want us to split up, though.
Look, I want this to work more than anything on earth. Okay?
Okay.
I mean, what am I going to buy you for your birthday, eh? Doll's house, rocking horse, crayons.
What?
Or just as I think you're a grown-up, you go and behave like a child.
It is incredible how Coronation Street have managed to make it so powerful, and it's, of course, pre-Watershed.
Mm-hmm.
So they have steered away from any lurid physical depictions of what happens. And of course, it proves you don't need to see anything of that.
No,
To be
absolutely.
utterly horrified.
No,
by
it's
what's going on.
terrifying. And I get asked quite a lot, like, if it's been difficult or dangerous or dark, sort of learning the lines and doing the scenes. Lucy, who plays Bethany, is an absolute dream to work with. And the crew and everyone is amazing. What I'm finding really hard now, even just listening to that now or watching it back, you getting this sort of sense of where Corrie have gone with this. It's been amazing to be part of so far.
Well, Bethany's vulnerability is played perfectly by Lucy, isn't it? The fact that she needs this man to love her.
Yeah, she's dragged into a point where she's in love with him, but mostly she's terrified of losing him. But because she's so young and inexperienced, she doesn't realise that that's not normal. She's being told, as you heard there, what about what adults do. About, you know, if you were grown up enough, you'd realise that this is normal. This is what relationships are about. And of course, it's not. That's not a healthy relationship at all.
And the stereotype is, of course, of dirty old men.
Yep.
Children
Yeah.
and the grooming of children. I was reading something about some of the research you'd done, which looked at a 21-year-old who had groomed a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
Now, if you had a 17-year-old daughter or son even and brought home a 21-year-old, perhaps you wouldn't be as concerned about that age difference, 17 to 21, 4 years, etc. I mean, that was terrifying because that 21-year-old in question went on to...
Oh, horrendous things.
Yeah,
Stuff that he was up to.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing that we have to learn is that it happens across all age groups, happens across all classes, it happens across all races. There's no one group that are committing or victims of this.
Well, you might be mistaken if you'd seen the press to think that only
absolutely.
one group was doing this. Yeah.
I mean, that's the sort of ridiculous and counterproductive coverage of the whole issue, is that when you realise that people all up and down, every ladder, every class, every sort of financial situation, every age are either perpetrating this or even or victims. And one of the big issues that charities like NSPCC or Barnardo's are facing is that a lot of victims don't identify themselves as victims because they don't realise, like at the moment we're watching Bethany, she doesn't realise what's happening to her is wrong and is actually a crime. She doesn't identify herself as a victim because she thinks everything's her fault. And that's often the case with survivors and victims. For a long time they're brainwashed into thinking that it's their fault and that it's up to them to behave in a certain way in order to impress somebody else. And it's that kind of level of manipulation that makes it very hard to identify victims and then sort of get them to speak out and then be able to help them rebuild their lives.
Because she is 16, isn't she?
Mm-hmm.
So in that respect, legally allowed to have sex.
Yes.
The illegality of it is the grooming, the psychological manipulation, which then leads to her being essentially pimped out.
Yeah, it goes from sexual abuse to sexual exploitation. I think it's very good that Corrie haven't taken on too much on their plate. They're going for a 16-year-old rather than a 15-year-old, so there's a very clear legal line there. But as charities will point out, and particularly with the NSPCC's recent push for the Flaw in the Law campaign, there's a grey area, 16, 17, 18, both in the way people that age behave and think and are growing up, but also in terms of people's perception of the law and their rights. But again, it could be a 21-year-old who's being groomed or a 50-year-old who's being love-bombed and manipulated. I mean, it happens to anyone.
And again, this man, Nathan Curtis, this character that you play, I mean, he is a sociopath, isn't he? I mean, he's incapable of empathy.
Yeah.
You see that in your eyes, you know, when you're playing him. Oh. Not now, may I just say, but when you're playing.
No, we were very clear at the beginning as a team with the writers and the producers at the beginning. We don't want to... as an actor, you always want to project a sort of a three-dimensional character, of course, but we don't want to sort of lean on, I can see why he's behaving like this. We can understand he obviously was very close to his pets or something. You know, the key thing is that he's not the stereotype. He's not a funny man who lives on his own or lives with his cats or anything. You know, it's nothing like that. It could be anyone. In fact, often it is. It's your hero. It's the guy you look up to. It's
He's
your
young
sports
and successful.
coach.
Youngish and successful, right?
There you know. Yeah, he is young. Youngish. But he's got to be charismatic enough or successful enough or charming enough or smooth enough or good looking enough or whatever enough to win somebody's heart over initially. And he did bring Bethany into his trap very smoothly, and it's a kind and flattering filled sort of slippery slope that she's fallen down, and that's the truth of it.
For those who watch Coronation Street, they will know about Mel,
Yeah.
right? Nathan's other half, as it were, or certainly someone who considers herself to be his number one.
Yeah.
And she initially is complicit
Yeah.
in this. She understands that something is going on here.
Yes, very definitely, because she will have been through it. Complicit is, like, as you pointed out earlier, they're not falling in love with each other. It's him with a project on her. I think
Right.
Mel is exactly the recipient of the same behaviour.
Yeah.
And Nathan arrived under sort of Shona's cloud initially, following her, and has obviously moved on from her and left that beside. But he's dragged Mel along through with him, and she's having to sort of live that horrible knife's edge between the cruelty being inflicted upon her, or being part of the cruelty being inflicted on Bethany. And Sonia playing it is brilliant, isn't she? And it's just, you see the dilemma constantly.
We're talking to Chris Harper, who is, of course, the actor who plays Nathan Curtis in Coronation Street. If you're a fan of Coronation Street, you will have seen Chris's portrayal of this chilling human being, as I said, incapable of empathy, who is grooming a 16-year-old, Bethany Platt, the character's name. And then, of course, once groomed her, he is essentially farming her out to other men. And it really is an important storyline to be told in such a mainstream platform. And what kind of feedback, Chris, have you got from viewers?
Absolutely, universally positive. Like, face to face, it's been incredible, and people have moved me to tears because somebody will come up to me on some public transport, and their lip will be quivering, and they'll just hold my arm and say, "This is a really important storyline, thank you," and then they'll walk away again. Or people will come up and go, "It's so good that you're doing this pre-Watershed. I've been worried about my niece," or it's that I was not ready for. I was ready for abuse in the street, or people, misconstruing what an actor actually does, or being shocked. And there have been some people, Corrie, like long-standing Corrie fans, who are like, "Do we need a storyline this dark at tea time?" But it's just been immensely warm, the wave of response. People who are finally feeling like they're being represented in some way in a story rather than being labelled in the media.
Interesting that you mentioned that you thought that you might be, screamed at in the street, "Nathan, you so-and-so," etc., and that has not happened.
Not at all.
But it was certainly something that went through the thought process. And of course, your wife is also an actor. And what was the conversation like with her beforehand? I mean, obviously, she would have said, "Look, you have to take this role. I mean, it's going to take you way out of your comfort zone," which is, of course, any good actor wants to be taken out of their comfort zone. But trepidation from her at all?
She saw
Emily Bowker.
Emily Bowker, yeah. Well, she saw the bigger picture quicker than I did. I sort of started thinking, right, how do I learn my lines and where do I have to go? But she's like, no, this is going to be a really important story, and it is actually a subject that is very close to home for both of us. When you start realising, who is the victim of sexual abuse, and you start seeing people in your own community who are either being put away for it or people who are victims of it. I think we're probably all close to this storyline, probably more close than we talk about. And so it was for both of us. We talked about it right from the word go, as this is a chance to actually be in a fantastic community, and being in Coronation Street, a fantastic community of fans, a great legacy of story, brilliant character, duplicitous and manipulative, great fun. But really, for an actor, it's very rare to feel like you're actually part of a really big push. There's a lot going on. Bernardo's have got their Be Safe guide going on at the moment. They're one of the leading group working against CSA, with the NSPCC doing so much, and through Childline, of course, as well. Voicing CSA.uk. The government, there's also the independent inquiry that's going on at the moment, and the Truth Project. Corrie is just one part of a very big push on this at the moment. And to be part of that is such a compliment and such a privilege, and such a fantastic thing to be part of. I'm thrilled as an actor to be part of something like this.
And Chris, how much time do you have between receiving the script and being in front of the camera to process what's going on, to bring yourself to it, to compute what it is that you are expected to do?
You get about 2 or 3 weeks sometimes. Yeah, about that. But you'll always rush straight to the script and try and read it. But because of the nature of this, I have actually sort of had to find myself, for the first reading, I'll go and disappear into a quiet room or somewhere. Because there was one time when I was reading on a train, reading the scripts through for the first time, and it just made me feel sick. I couldn't quite believe Nathan has so many chances where he could just take the foot off the pedal and just make a decision. No, that's wrong. That's unkind. That's evil. And he always just decides to turn it up a notch. And it's really dissettling. So yeah, 2 or 3 weeks to try and make
He's
make sense.
addicted to the power, isn't he?
Yeah.
The domination.
Oh, it's control. Absolutely about control right from word go. And I think for him too, and the people I've spoken to who actually deal with counselling people who've perpetrated sex crimes, it begins often, not always obviously, but it begins with a level of control, and it is appealing. And whether you're lacking control in your own life or whether you just like that, whether it's just a buzz, something gives you confidence. And it starts like with Bethany being flattered and in a very kind position. She's feeling Nathan's being very nice to her. It's a soft edge at the beginning of this, and then Nathan has gone down and down and down, and he's really drilled down into his own soul. I mean, he's just doing horrible things, and he's loving the fact he's in control, and he's getting money, and he's, the big man in the room.
What in the end, having spoken to so many people and spoke to the charities, what in the end results in these men, because it's largely men that perpetuate this crime, being found out and being brought before the law? Is it the victims themselves finally realising what's happening to them? Is it third parties seeing what's going on and reporting them to the authorities? I can imagine it's lots of different outcomes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know enough about the actual sort of level of prosecution and things like that. But in terms of I can't fathom how hard it must be for somebody who feels like they've been abused when they realise that the situation they're in isn't their fault. It's awful, and that to actually be brave enough to speak out, that's a massive, massive step. And to be able to do that and then report it is a massive step as well. And the police are becoming more and more aware of this. And as I said, there's lots of charities and places you can go to disclose. But when they're doing this, these survivors, they're helping us build a picture of what's happening, and helping stop that perpetrator doing it again to somebody else. These people, Nathan, unless he's stopped, will be doing it to someone else. There's been Shona, there's now Mel, and now Bethany. There'll be more. So unless you speak out, it will go on and on and on. But the level of bravery just takes my breath away. And some of the people I've met are just the bravest, strongest people I know. It's been incredible.
Because some of the survivors have been so utterly enthralled by their persecutors that they sometimes refuse to even engage with the police.
Yeah, either just through plain terror, or actually, as I think you'll see with Bethany, she just doesn't see what's happened to her is wrong. She thinks everybody is out to get Nathan. Yeah.
That he's the victim, because of course there is that point, isn't it, when he says to her, and my apologies for people who are not keeping up the minute by minute of what's going on, but when he says to her, I've been hurt before and I've always been betrayed, and she's kind of, oh gosh, I would never betray you. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but that's essentially is that playing that kind of that somehow he's been the victim.
Yeah. He needs her, and because she's so special. That's a constant thing. You're really special. I need you. Without you, I wouldn't be anything. And then what he does, he turns it round. Without me, you wouldn't be anything.
How can people spot this from happening to people that they love?
Yeah.
That their daughters, their sisters, even, I mean, you're talking about all the different ages involved as well.
Yeah, well, it's something Bernardo's are taking very seriously in terms of teenagers, particularly at the moment. They're looking for the signposts, whether the person you're concerned about is starting to receive interesting or elaborate gifts, for instance, something that doesn't quite fit the normal. Whether they go missing regularly or they're missing school, maybe they've the mood swings, even broader mood swings than your average teenager. But they're dealing suddenly with these massive, massive issues that they won't have dealt with before, and they're whether they're increasingly anxious. You notice certain things in their behaviour, or even they're asking for money, or even perhaps have more money than you'd expect them to have. It is about recognising these signposts. And I think one of the things I've loved about the way that Corrie have gone about this is that right from word go, the viewer has known that Nathan is wrong. There's something wrong in his box. There's something reptilian in his eyes, and you're not, as a viewer, being led astray, thinking, "Oh, that Nathan guy is sweet, isn't he?" We've known from word go wrong, and what he's doing to Bethany is wrong. We know this, but we're watching Bethany, who's bright and charismatic and witty and sharp and isolated from her mates, and she's going through a difficult time. We're seeing her fall for him, which I think is a very clever depiction, because that's actually it's a very true story. I'm sorry to say.
Well, that's right. I mean, even when he hugs Mel, he doesn't look into camera, but you see the look in his eyes, and the emotion drains from it instantly. It's like, he hugs Mel and he's like, "Oh, you're the one, really, you're the one," gives her a kiss, then gives her a hug, and then you just see his eyes, and his whole face just goes back to that stone cold manipulative self. And the weird thing is, you always use the word clever in a positive sense, but I have to use it in a negative sense with these people. They are incredibly clever in the way that they manipulate these vulnerable individuals.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Nathan, as I said before, he's got so many different points at which he could choose to do something. He's made the decision to go and woo the parents at one point. That is absolutely what these people do. They win over the trust of the parents. They win over the people who are around the person they're trying to groom. And groomers are more than happy to take years over it, whether it's writing letters to them, every week. And there's a terrible story, a brilliant guy called David Lean, who's doing a lot of work for Voicing CSA now. He was groomed for years by letter. This guy would write to him and his dad. And eventually the dad said, "Well, why didn't you go and stay at his for a weekend and kick a ball about?" We from the outside, this is what Corrie are doing, we from the outside, it takes our breath away, but from the inside, it makes absolute sense. It's just a sort of massive charm operation for Nathan, which is why he enjoys it so much.
Now, the future of the storyline. You're, of course, under strict instructions from the ITV press office to not give anything away. I'm sure there you go. There's a sniper posted just outside our window here. A little bit extreme, bringing a sniper with you. I have to say ITV, but there you go. It's the BBC, enemy territory.
Yep.
What can you tell us about? I mean, give us a sense of the emotion journey, because you're not going to be able to give us plot specifics of where it goes.
I think the whole thing is through Bethany. It's got to be through Bethany's eyes. And you were absolutely right earlier about that it's pre-Watershed, but importantly, it's not titillating. We're not in any way sort of engaged in the romance of this relationship at all. So we gradually get to see the sacrifices that she's having to make for Nathan, and how big those sacrifices are and the toll it's taking on her. And this is something that Lucy's performing brilliantly. We gradually just see her get more and more lost, less and less able to kind of comprehend the seemingly adult world she's now being welcomed into. She doesn't realise it's warped and it's wrong, it's evil, it's illegal. She just thinks if she keeps paddling, she'll survive it, and you just see her drown. So we're going to follow her through an incredible curve over the next few months.
Once you two, lastly, have done these kinds of scenes, and I've seen a number of them already, and they're intense and they make your skin crawl. What's the release?
I don't know, really. I tell you what, the hardest thing I'm finding now, genuinely, is hearing it, or like I just did, or watching the scenes back. Actually, in the moment of doing these scenes, everyone's terribly nice. The crew are very supportive. The script's been very, very well written. We've talked to people who've been through this stuff, so they're going through far worse stuff. We're just reenacting things, and as actors, you work on stuff with the directors. You talk about the pacing of the scene or where the light will be, and then we'll turn the cameras around and we'll shoot it from this angle. So you've done it 7 times before you've even thought about it too much. And it's just, that's the job. It's part of the joy of it. But now watching it back, or having people come up to you and talk about the impact it's made on them, it's the most privileged position I certainly feel I've ever been in as an actor. It's amazing.
Well, Chris, including the impact it's had on some of our listeners, glad Corrie did this, has been tweeted to us. Hard to watch, but maybe will stop Bethany's story happening to more people.
That's the hope. Yeah, that's the hope.
Chris, thank you very much indeed for coming in today to talk to us about Nathan Curtis, his role on Coronation Street. And Coronation Street, of course, is on ITV, never knowingly not on ITV, in fact, in the week. It's certainly there a lot, and it's a powerful storyline, which I suggest you're not scared of. Go and watch it because it's brilliantly acted. Now, for details of organisations which offer advice and support with sexual abuse, go online to bbc.co.uk/actionline or call the BBC Action Line to hear recorded information. That's 0800 077 077. Now, lines are open 24 hours and calls are free from landlines and mobiles.
I'd love to actually just point out that the NSPCC have just started something called a Speak Out, Stay Safe campaign, and where they, for free, they will come and present in school assemblies. So there's a lot of information there, a great opportunity to teach children about the signs so they can avoid people like Nathan.
Chris Harper, thank you very much for coming in, my friend.
You're listening to a BBC 5 Live podcast.
If you like this, you might also like this.
Eye of the Storm with Emma Barnett.
Every day we're covering some sort of storm that changes people's lives forever. To find out more about our range of podcasts, click, tap or swipe bbc.co.uk/5live.